Well, hello everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to you all, wherever you happen to be in the world, be that in Europe or the Americas or Middle East, Far East, India, Africa, wherever you happen to be, China, if you're a penguin on the Antarctic, wherever you happen to be, whoever you are very warm and welcome. And it's great, particularly to welcome back those who come each month to one of our series. This series is on the Practical CSM Framework, and today we're going to be reviewing Phase 3 Onboarding. My name is Rick Adams. I am the CEO and founder at Practical CSM. And I'm also the author of the Practical CSM Framework, which you can find in my book, Practical Customer Success Management, which in turn you can find in all good bookshops. So please do grab that. If you haven't got a copy of that, I hope if you're into customer success management that you would find it full of good advice and helpful to you. I know we've had some great reviews from it. So generally the reception has been really good. So as I said, today we're going to be going through Phase 3 Onboarding, which is obviously a very important part of the process that we go through as customer success managers working with our clients. As I go through the material, please feel free to talk to me in the chat window. You can see that Gerald, our event manager, has already said hello in there, and actually I'll just say hi from Rick. So please do, even just type hi and tell me where you're from. That'd be great. Who are you? Where are you from? What's your role currently? If you're into customer success already, or whether this is something that you are studying in order to become a CSM. And as we go through, if you want to ask me any questions, you're very welcome to do so. Yeah, okay. So like time allowing, obviously, I might or might not be able to answer all the questions. I probably will. We don't generally have so many thousands, but obviously if it's off topic, I might say so. And obviously if it's coming up in a moment, I might say that. But feel free. That would be great. I like to talk to you. I really do. I think it makes it more interesting for everybody. So other than that, also just to say, this is one of a series. So next month, obviously, is going to be Phase 4, which is on looking at the beginning of the adoption process with adoption planning. And then the following month, we'll be looking at adoption implementation, more of the sort of the project management side of things, if you like, and then value realization after that, and engagement evaluation finally in Phase 7. So those are the months and the series ahead. So if you look at the webinar chat, you'll see a link to events, and you can pre-book for those events as well, if that's of interest to you. So that's the events there. And so without further ado, let's get cracking. I will share my screen, and then let's just hit share and screen and share. There we go. And then I will also start my slides, which is pretty important. How's that? There we go. Lovely. And then just checking in the chat. So hi, Cherie. And is that Ihor from Ukraine? Welcome to you both. And I hope you'll find today's content useful. Also, Peter from Berlin. Hi from San Diego. Beautiful part of the world. Lovely zoo. You've got there, Laura, fantastic beaches and such beautiful people in San Diego as well, if I may say so. Okay, so hi Molly, Rachel, Nicholas, great to have you. Hi Eleanor, great to have you with us. Okay, so let me get started then. Phase 3 onboarding. Let's take a look at what we've got coming up. So if you haven't met me before, as mentioned, I am the CEO and founder of Practical CSM. We do all sorts of training and coaching and consulting related to customer success management. The author of the Practical CSM Framework, which is in my book, as I've mentioned. And I've got a fair amount of experience in sort of consulting and training and management within the technology industry that I hope provides a good backbone for me to draw upon of relevance and useful information, which you can hopefully get some value from as we go through this content today. Anyway, that's enough about me. Let's talk about the content today. So we'll do a very brief review, which we always do through this series, on what the purpose of a framework and a quick breakdown of the Practical CSM Framework for those who are just dipping in on this particular session. But we'll very quickly get to the new content, which is the phase 3 onboarding content itself, which you can see there. And we'll go through a relevant series of things, and then we'll review them at the end. So let's just get the general framework stuff out of the way. It's only a couple of slides. If you've already seen this, feel free to grab a coffee. But for those for whom it's new, using a framework, the concept here is rather than reinvent the wheel every time, right, let's actually just go right ahead and start using that wheel. It's already been invented. We don't need to invent it again. So just as Sir Isaac Newton is saying here, he didn't start from first principles in his scientific experimentation and thinking. He actually built on what was already there. There were already lots of principles in place. He didn't need to go back to fundamentals, what is an atom, because that was already in place. And that enabled him to move forwards with his theories of gravity and so on and so forth. And so same thing with us, right? We don't need to start afresh working out from fundamental first principles what we should do in customer success management. That ground has been trodden, and we've already got it documented in best practice. And the nice thing, of course, is not only has it been trodden, it's been tried and tested. And so we can pick up from those people, stand on the shoulders of giants who've already been there and done that, and apply that best practice to our own situation without having to go through that same iterative process of discovery. We can just go straight to best practice. Of course, we may need to alter it a little bit and edit it to fit our particular organization, and that's like the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle, is that most of the time the majority is going to be the same, but when you then get down to the details, some of it's going to be a little bit different. But that's fine. We're going to get the spade work done for us. We're going to get that 80% done, and then the 20% is the uniqueness about our products and services, our customers, our unique strategy, and what we do in customer success management, and our skills and knowledge and expertise, and how all of that fits together, and what we need therefore to do as CSMs. So the framework will take us 80% of the way. We then customize that framework to fit our specific needs to get the other 20% of the way, so that we are therefore reducing the amount of work needed to get to the same high quality result. So what is the framework? Well, it's the structure that holds things together, right? So it's a pre-created structure that has an order to it, so that as we go through a customer journey, a post-sales customer journey, each step on the way, that structure is in place to say, oh, you're at this step. Well, then you need to do these things, and this is how to do it. Step-by-step guidance on what to do and how to do it at each step in the way. So that's the purpose of the framework. We publish it, so it's known in advance. We train people on it so that they are good at doing it in advance. And then when a customer signs a contract, we can assign them to a CSM, and off they go. They can apply the framework to that new customer. 80-20 rule. There's going to be some uniqueness about that customer, even that means that they're going to need to be a little bit creative sometimes, and not necessarily do it exactly the same as they did last time, but the process will get them 80% of the way. So that's what a framework is. It helps to ensure that we do the right things to the right quality at the right time, or in the right order, if you like. Okay, that's frameworks in general. What about the Practical CSM Framework? Well, this is my framework that I came up with, having founded and run my own SaaS business for 6 years. Sold that back in 2012, and then I consulted with a training company, Comstor Training, and ultimately Cisco, and I helped Cisco to develop their customer success training and certification program. And I learned, of course, an awful lot from Cisco and from my 6 years of running my own SaaS business, and previous to that to consulting in blue chip companies around professional services and using the software product that my company was selling. And so with all of that, I combined it all to create a framework called the Practical CSM Framework, which is really what my book is all about, Practical Customer Success Management. And so it divides up the customer success journey, in other words, the post-sales journey that our customer goes on, into these 3 stages, the orange, the blue, and the green there you see around the outside. And let me just, actually, I've said all of this, haven't I? Okay. And it enables us to deliver the high quality service. It makes sure that we are consistent in our approach. It enables us to make sure that we do actually do everything and not make any errors or omissions. It ensures, therefore, that the relationship remains good with our customers. It allows us to maximize the value from our customers. And it makes it a lot easier, actually, to onboard new CSMs, because we've got a process for them to follow. They haven't got to work out what to do. We can actually hand them, the playbook. We can hand them the framework and say, this is what to do. We can obviously provide training on the framework, which is what my company does. And so we can get people up and running and going and productive much more quickly, which allows us to scale our team better. And I would say, therefore, that overall, employing something like the Practical CSM Framework is going to make a competitive advantage to you. So these are these 3 stages that I was alluding to a moment ago, when I suddenly realized I should be moving forwards with my slides rather than just talking. And they are the initial stage, the user readiness stage, and the ongoing stage. And let's very quickly look at these. I'm not going to dwell on it, because in the initial stage, we've got phases 1 and 2. These are the things we do to initialize the relationship. These are the things we do, if you like, even before we meet the customer, preparing ourselves and preparing the customer. So in phase 1 preparation, we're going to do some research. We're going to make sure that we understand the needs. We're going to make sure we're ready to help the customer. In phase 2, we're going to get their commitment to work with us. That's all I'm going to say on it. We did that last month, so we covered that. If you weren't there, then if you reach out to our website, you should be able to find a recording of last month's activities there. The user readiness stage is what we're now entering into with phase 3 on moving forwards into phases 4 and 5. And so between these 3, onboarding, and then the 2 adoption phases, adoption planning and adoption implementation, this is user readiness. And so between these 3, we move our client from unconscious incompetence all the way through to mastery. So they start off not even knowing what they don't know. They don't even know that they don't know it. Then we move them to conscious incompetence. Now at least they know what they don't know. They know they're going to need to know these things. Then we move them to conscious competence. So now they have understood it and they begin to be able to do it. And then ultimately we move them to mastery. Now, no one's going to master something, a particular complex thing, overnight. Now, if you've got a really simple product, it might not take that long to master it. I mean, if you sell chewing gum, how much effort and time does it take before you can really master that ability to make use of that chewing gum product? I'd say, put it in your mouth and chew it. You're there. But if you've got a very complicated software product like, I don't know, like Oracle or SAP, well, it could take many years before that company is fully getting all the value out of, a full multi-million-dollar SAP integration. So, and everything in between sort of fits. So your products and services are going to fit somewhere in that ratio. So how long does it take to get through the unconscious incompetence through to the mastery? Depends on your product, depends on your customers. But these are the 3 stages or phases that we're going to go through of onboarding, adoption planning, and adoption implementation to help them get there. And then in phase 6, once we've got them through that process and they are now generating value, we need to help them, of course, to measure, analyze and report on that value back to their decision makers to make sure that they renew the contract. Very important from our perspective as well as from theirs. And also we want to sort of drive value for ourselves through increasing the renewal revenues, upselling and cross-selling, and through advocacy and through help getting closer to the customer and building better, closer relationships with them. So we'll be doing all of that in the value realization phase, and engagement evaluation takes a step back then and says, okay, out of all of those 6 phases that we went through, from preparation through to a value realization, what lessons can we learn? How can we improve what we do in the future? So that's all I want to talk about in the general. Now let's turn to the specific Oh, by the way, there's a central repository concept because we want to store data once and keep it up to date in one place and then give everybody access to it. Sorry, I should have said that. So let's focus now on phase 3. Phase 3 onboarding is what we're going to focus on for today. Okay, good. So here we go then. So what happens at the onboarding phase? So remember that in the previous phases, the preparation commitment, we've met the customer, we've met the principal project lead, or senior project lead, the SPL, as I call them, and we've begun to build a trust relationship with them. We've agreed and committed to working with them. They have agreed and committed to working with us. So now what we need to do is provide them with what they need to know at the start of the journey. And actually the onboarding phase is the shortest of the phases in this stage that we're in here. The adoption is going to take much longer than the onboarding. So it's a specific activity, and you could say really, it's its own phase because it's so important. In a timescale sense, it's really just part of the overall previous phases of preparation and commitment. It's the last bit of preparation and commitment prior to the onboarding and adoption, then the adoption planning and adoption implementation. That onboarding bit just fits nicely in the middle. So why is it important? Well, here's the truth, and the research is very clear on this point, and I don't have any to quote you, but you can, I'm sure, go and find some from various sources. Is that the evidence shows that the sooner the customer reaches value, the more likely they are to renew. And this is because when you have when you make a purchase, there is a risk involved. So you've put money in, you've got nothing out yet because you've just made the purchase, and then it's all risk until you begin to get some value back. And of course, as you get some value back, so you can remove a bit of the risk, because if it cost you $200,000 and you've got nothing back, there's still $200,000 at risk. If you got 50,000 back, there's only 150,000 at risk now. So this concept of time to value is actually something very dear to the hearts of your customer. How quickly can they start to see a return on their investment in your product or service? The faster they get it, the less risk there is, the more happy they're going to be. The longer they have to wait before any value comes back, the more risk remains on the table for longer periods of time. Also, simple maths will tell you that if you start gaining value more quickly, then the total value will be greater, because you can continue to generate value per period. And obviously, if value generation started earlier, you've had more periods, more weeks or months or years in order to be able to generate value. And so therefore, the overall addition of all of the value created throughout the entire lifetime of their use of your product is greater. So they generate more value more quickly and reduce risk. So what's wrong with that? Every customer will want that. They will recognize and understand this. The good ones will understand it in a very literal sense. Many will understand it, if you like, unconsciously, even though they may not put it into these terms. But the best senior decision makers will absolutely understand this from a mathematical point of view, and will be asking you, how quickly can we see value being returned on this, and how much value will be returned? So these are questions that onboarding will help us to answer. It's also true to say that an informed, educated and enabled customer tends to be a happy customer. We fear the unknown. Okay, again, let's think about risk. I mean, the unknown is risky. If you turn the lights out, right, suddenly it's scary. Why is it more scary with the lights out? It's exactly the same as with the lights on, except you can't see stuff, right? So why is it more scary? Because you can't see stuff, because you don't know what's there, okay? So the ability to see things helps us to reassure us. Same with our customers. So if we've laid it out for them on the table and they understand it, if they're informed, educated and enabled, right, here's what you bought, here's why you bought it to remind you, here's how much of it you bought, here's what outcomes you're requiring from it, and here's how long it's going to take, and here are the key milestones, and here are the things we need to do in order to achieve those outcomes, all nicely laid out for them in a simple to understand way. And then they feel that they're on top of things. They feel comfortable. Okay, this is achievable, as opposed to sort of facing some huge blank wall of, well, I've never done this sort of thing before, and I haven't got a clue how to go about it. And I know we've got to get this end result, but I don't know how. And that can feel very scary for a customer. We don't want scary customers. We want happy customers. Okay, so informed, educated, and enabled is what we're after here. And actually, this makes, in a sense, go a little bit against what we might immediately think. You know what? Sometimes customers prefer to be to have automated assistance so they can help themselves. Because, for example, maybe they're in a different time zone and they don't want to be working at 2 o'clock in the morning because that's when the CSM is free. Or, for example, they happen to like working over the weekends, and that suits them very well on certain projects, and they want to get going. They don't want to wait till Monday. They actually want the answers today on Saturday morning so they can get a certain way through things over the weekend, and we're not there. But the automated systems, if we've got them, could actually help them. So think about how we could actually use a combination of customer success managers, humans, with all the sort of creativity and problem solving that we've got, but also with automated processes and systems to provide automated customer success support as well, so that the customer can be self-helping as much as possible. Meantime, that helps us because it reduces our costs as well, and frees up our CSMs to go and do stuff with other customers that do need an actual person to provide guidance and advice. And this is just really reiterating that point that a self-service model gives customers control. They don't have to wait for us. They don't have to. We don't want to be in charge, right? We want them to feel in control and in charge because we want them to own the project. Somebody who feels like they own the project and is responsible for the project is more likely to get stuff done. And it's in our interest that our customer does stuff, because if they don't do stuff, and it needs to be the right stuff, they won't get the right results. And if they don't get the right results, they're less likely to renew. Okay, is this all making sense, please? Please tell me in the chat window so far. Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free. Okay, so onboarding versus adoption. So onboarding comes from from journeys, doesn't it? It comes from whether that's onboarding from maybe a ship or mostly an airplane. Thank you, Adrian. Like this chap here who's getting onto an airplane. Now, if you think about the onboarding part of an airplane journey, how much of the journey is onboarding? Tiny bit, the first bit. In fact, so much is it the first bit. It's actually the bit before they even close the door, let alone push off from the stand and taxi to the runway. They haven't even got to the runway before onboarding is over. Okay, and they can't start that process of the actual journey until onboarding is done, because it's a legal requirement that everybody is sat down, that your luggage is stowed, your seat is upright, your seat belt is on, your tray is away, and your footrest is down. You can tell I've been on a few flights. So that process has to be gone through, and it's very much an informational safety check. These are the things that are important on your journey. You need to know this, and this. This is where this is. This is there, to your left and to your right. We follow these safety guidance, and then they can back off and they can go to the runway, and they cannot take off until all of that has happened. Okay, not allowed to. Same thing here. We can't actually send them on the journey until they're prepared for the journey. Onboarding is about preparing for the journey. It is not the journey itself. So is it part of the journey? Well, philosophically, you can answer that question. It's the start bit that enables them to go on the journey. So we need to provide them with basic information about the solution. What have you bought? How much have you bought? Etc. As it says there. How do you access it? What is its features and functions? And then the next steps. How are you going to get support for it? What type of training is available? What's the process involved? How much process might you need to actually create for your company? And also the role of the CSM and how we're going to help them fit. And you can see, therefore, it very much fits as the link between that previous commitment phase and the next phase, which is planning the adoption. And that's why this onboarding fits nicely in the middle. So that was the onboarding. Now the adoption then actually delivers the knowledge, the skills, the attitude, the resources, and the support. It's the delivery of those things. They've got to be planned for, which is why we have phase 4 adoption planning. And then it's got to be implemented, which is why we have phase 5 adoption implementation. Phase 4 focuses on our change management skills and expertise, knowing what needs to go into that journey. And then phase 5 on our project management expertise, the ability to make that happen in real time to the right quality and so on. So we'll worry about those in the next upcoming couple of months. But for now, just to say that that's what it's all about. It's about providing the knowledge, the skills, the attitude, the resources and the support, and doing all of this stuff in the right order, planning for it, implementing it, measuring it, and making sure that every single person who is impacted by this initiative, by the implementation of our product or service, now at the end of adoption, not only knows what they're doing, but is actually doing it. Okay, but that's by the end of adoption. So we might ask ourselves at that stage, and I'm just sort of thinking ahead here, do we have standard methodologies or processes for determining what the needs are in terms of, well, how much knowledge does a user need? How much skill do they need? Do they already have those things? Or are they going to be hiring new people? Are they going to be moving people from one job to another? Or are they actually just replacing a like-for-like product within a job? And it's just a question of showing how our product does it compared to the old product. You know, there's all sorts of different options in here. What's the attitude of the users going to be like? Are they going to embrace our product? Thank goodness, this is going to save me so much time. Or is it, oh my goodness, they're asking me to do yet another thing. You know, I haven't got time to do all the things I already do, and now they're putting even more pressure on me, for example. And there are lots of other examples of, you know, of worse case than that. Like, does this mean that they're going to fire half of us because they're automating it, or things like that? Okay. And then we need to also consider how they're going to measure all of these. How do they know? How do they know, and I'm talking about the customer here, whether they have now onboarded sufficiently, and whether they've now adopted sufficiently? What does that mean in the first place anyway? What's going to prove that they've arrived, if not at the destination, then at least they've taxied to the runway and they're ready to take off, or that they are, you know, a milestone through that journey between, you know, I'm in Ireland, so between here and, for the sake of argument, Singapore. You know, I'm going to go across you know, Europe, and then they're going to go across Russia, and so on and so forth. So, you know, at these different stages, you know, at the milestones I'm at, am I at the point that I should be given the time that has gone by? You know, how are we helping them? So in summary then, onboarding is about answering the question, do the customer's key stakeholders understand the journey that's ahead of them? Adoption is really asking the question, are the customer's users now ready to undergo that journey? And then value realization is, are they undergoing the journey? Have they started to generate value? And then you could also say that what we're really saying is that although my framework divides these into 3 phases, phases 3, 4, and 5 in stage 2, actually this is very blended. You know, one just blends into the other and naturally starts and finishes together. There is no sort of gap or bump or anything of that nature. It should just feel very natural. And then you could also put a box around the whole thing and say that we need also to consider our phase 7 engagement evaluation, which is constantly looking to see how well are we doing as customer success managers, how can we improve the service we're delivering to our customers. So another way of looking at that, as we said earlier, is to say, all right, let's look at the journey the customer goes on in terms of their ability to generate value. Starting with our unconscious incompetence. They don't even know what they don't know. They've bought the product, but they don't know how to get to mastery. So moving to conscious incompetence. Now, having onboarded them, they understand that this is the journey ahead, and these are the sort of core challenges that they're going to face, and the types of things that they're going to need to deal with internally within the organization to get to competence. And then competence. Now they've implemented those things. They've communicated, they've trained, they've supported, maybe they've rewarded and incentivized, maybe they've hired, maybe they've changed processes, and maybe they've upgraded people's roles and all sorts to get to the competence. Now they've got to do it, because mastery takes time. Just like, you can learn to ride a bicycle perhaps in a week or two, but to be a world champion cyclist is going to take years. Or same thing with swimming, right? You can learn to swim in a week or two, but if you want to be a world champion swimmer, that's going to take years of practice to master it. Same thing with our product, perhaps. Again, depends on the nature and complexity of our product. Competence to mastery might be right next to each other in time, or if with a complex product, there might be many months of using it to get better and better at it, and to improve and refine their skills. You need to contextualize that, of course, to your own business. And that might look like this if we then put in these different parts of the framework. So they start off incompetent and unconscious of their incompetence, and then we deliver onboarding. And by the end of onboarding, they've gone through unconscious incompetence, and even now, conscious incompetence is halfway through. And by adoption planning, we've moved them through that to complete conscious incompetence. And even then, as we go into adoption implementation, we're implementing the training and the support and so on to make them competent. So by the end of adoption implementation, everybody is competent, and then they start to use it. And as they use it, so of course they master our product over whatever length of time is required. And that value realization one there is shown as being a longer process, and of course it could be much longer than that. It could be that onboarding takes a day, adoption planning takes 2 weeks, adoption implementation takes a month, and value realization takes the next 7 years. And that doesn't mean that mastery is going to take 7 years. Of those 7 years, they're going to master our product within the first year and be using it to its max through the next 6 years. So again, that pattern, it will be different depending upon your product, your service, your customers, the initiatives they're using it for, and so on and so forth. And maybe you've got different segments, and you can segment your customers based on these different journeys, if you like. This is very much a customer journey from a customer success perspective, isn't it? And think then about, what do you need to deliver as a CSM for each segment? What are their needs in terms of what they need to know at the onboarding, what they need to get good at, that we plan for adoption planning and that we implement adoption implementation, and then how do we measure that and prove the value back in value realization? All right. Okay, good. So again, let's just ask the question, is this making sense? Does anyone have any questions? And feel free to put it into the chat windows. Everybody happy? And as you answer that, I'm going to go on with the concept of the welcome kit. And this is, I think, a great way of delivering, the practical way of delivering onboarding. How do we actually deliver it? How do we get them to be unconsciously, go from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, to actually at least know what the journey ahead is going to be like? Well, we need to provide them with that information, and a welcome kit is a great way to do that. But before we decide what a welcome kit is and what goes into it, we've got to answer the question you see here on the slide, which is, well, what do they need to know at this stage? As they, being the senior project lead and any other sort of key stakeholders within the client organization that we're working with. Okay, so we need to make sure they know the components of the solution we're providing, its principal features and functions, how much of it they've purchased and how they access it, and how it's licensed, and how to get support, how to get training, where the self-help is, all of that sort of stuff, and any guidance on how to use it, any FAQs, get started, quick start guides, all of that sort of stuff. So we need to make sure that they've got access to all of that for sure. And I like the concept of a welcome pack or a welcome kit. And by that, do I mean something physically printed? Well, it could be. And perhaps if you've got a very expensive, high class type product, you might want to have something printed and bound and glossy and looking like the status it ought to look like for the type of product that you're delivering. On the other hand, it may not be sort of relevant or even useful for our clients to have printed materials. They might consider that to be, a waste of environmental resources more than it is a value to them. So you need to think carefully about whether you actually go to the printed and bound, or whether you stay in digital, or whether you combine those two. You also then, as well as thinking about what goes into it, need to think about, well, who is going to send that to them? Is it the salesperson from previously, or is it the customer success manager kicking off this relationship? And also, when we say send it to who? Who is going to receive it? Who needs is there one person who is the senior project lead, SPL, that's who I describe? Are there multiple project stakeholders who we need to make sure have access to this information? And thinking about that point, would you agree with me that just because you've sent something to somebody doesn't mean they've read it? Would you agree with that? And by the way, taking that a stage further, so feel free to answer that, but also, just because they've read it, does that mean they've understood it? And by the way, even if they've read it and understood it, does that mean they're going to actually take any action? So whilst you're thinking about that, feel free to respond to those points. I'm just going to read what Adrian has said. So how do you recommend balancing giving the customer everything they might need to know versus overwhelming them with information overload, and ensuring that they actually consume the information when they need it? Yeah, such a great point, Adrian. And Eichel was saying, yeah, this is a hard decision. So similar point that I was making about how do we make sure that what we deliver to them is, yeah. So these are sort of combined questions, because we need to make sure that what we deliver is delivered to the person who actually cares about it, and that they understand that this is not just a circular. This is an important message that has got information that they really do need. So it's important to not just have the information there, but to make sure they know this email or this set of information, this is the important information. So we've got to find out what's important to them. So if we want them to take action, for somebody to take action, they need to be motivated. That expression, WIIFM, what's in it for me? Okay, what's in it for me, for them? Well, if we don't know that, then how are we going to, psychologically, how are we going to move their mind? So unless we found like what their concerns are, we need to know what worries them, what challenges them. And then we can address exactly their challenges, their worries, their concerns, and their problems in that documentation, and not other stuff that is not of concern to them because they won't read that. And then that's what we put in there. So we've got to get into the minds of our client. We've got to get into the minds of the stakeholder, I think. And now, so then that is what, and then the how much. Well, this is an interesting point, because in fact, you may find that some of your customer stakeholders are much more sort of high level decision makers, and others are much more like thorough data driven decision makers. So some will trust what you tell them and say, that's fine, you don't need to tell me the detail. Others will demand the detail, and they'll make up their own mind. Thank you. They aren't going to take your word for anything. So actually, you might need a welcome kit parts 1 and 2, and part 1 is the bare bones that you send everybody, and part 2 is the backup information. And I would say there what we do is we use appendices. So then we've got the basic information in the core of the documentation, and then we send all the detail to the back in appendices for those who are interested. But then that means that those who don't have the time or just don't care don't need to wade through it all. So Adrian, yeah, exactly what we're just talking about. Yeah, absolutely. Now, ultimately then, what I'm suggesting is a welcome pack that doesn't need tailoring, because we've got both in it in the first place. But the ultimate would actually, of course, be to tailor every single welcome kit to every single client, which if you've got a $50,000 or $100,000 or more dollar type implementation, it's doable. If you've got a $500 customer, of course, it's not doable. We need a repeatable, scalable process. Okay, so who should receive it and when should it be sent? Very important. I recommend that you actually tell them first that you're going to send it, and explain to them over the phone or in conference or face-to-face what it is you're sending, why it's important, and what you want them to do with it, i.e. read it, and that you want them actually then to confirm that they've read it. And I would put some actions in there for them to do, like you're going to need to check these points off and then send that checked version back to me so that I can then seal that off as being mission accomplished for this phase of our journey together. Okay, so then everybody's clear about what everybody has and hasn't done, etc. And they're not just paying lip service saying, oh yeah, I did it, and then they didn't do it. Okay, so that's this kind of process that I would have a process around this, and I would talk to them about it beforehand, and I would check afterwards, and I would have some way of actually, making sure that they had done it. Like I said, perhaps check boxes, for example. This is also a fantastic opportunity to delight the customer. How can you delight the customer? What does that mean? Well, what I mean by delighting the customer is going a step further than they anticipated you would do to deliver more value than they thought you were going to do. So is there something in here that you could have said, oh, by the way, I know this was not something that we promised you, but we have already delivered X to you, and you can see the results here. Something of that nature. So what could that be? It could be all sorts of things. Feel free to put what you want into the chat window as to what it might be. But here's an opportunity straight out the gate to be able to be starting this relationship how you mean it to go on. Okay. So this is an example of a welcome kit. My company provides training. And one of the things that we found for our corporate clients is the problem with online self-study training is, when do you do it? It's a bit like gym membership, right? You buy the gym membership and you intend to go down the gym, and then life gets in the way and you don't go around to it. And then before you know it, 4 months have gone by and you haven't done any training. And so what we do in order to help the client to not fall into that trap is we provide them with a welcome kit, and we go through this process with them. And the welcome kit, obviously, as it says there, says welcome, and then it explains how they need to create accounts for our online portal, the Practical CSM Academy, and then watch the introductory videos, schedule a session with us, and we'll do a familiarization session, like an onboarding session for their team. Create a success plan. We've got a template for them with all of the things that they need to think about, including a timeline with objectives and so on. And we'll help them with that if they want. Identify any changes that are occurring and document them, and communicate to their team what's happening. Create the training plan, and then start measuring. And there we go, and that's it. And so that's our welcome kit. Our product is very simple in a sense. It's not SaaS. It's training, and so we've got this doesn't change a lot between different clients, but it might do if we have a big client who's purchased maybe a bunch of coaching from us as well, for example, and we might incorporate that in as an extra page within the kit. So you can see it's nice and simple, nice and clear. It's step by step. You follow it, you get the results, and it also works in conjunction with a success plan. And we'll talk more about the success plan next month. Okay, so hoping this is all making sense so far. So all right, fine. That's my welcome kit. But what's right for you? Well, I don't know, because I don't know about your organization. So this is where you now need to be creative and think about, well, what would be right for my company? Yeah, what we're doing okay right now? Or actually, do we need to think about this again and maybe come up with something that is a little bit better than what we've got? So things that you might consider in your discussion and your workshopping through that is, how extensive is your portfolio? Because if you sell like one SaaS product, it's a simple SaaS product, and everybody buys the same product, there aren't any changes to what they buy. It might be a lot easier, because maybe you're only going to be creating one welcome kit. You've only got one customer segment who buys this product to do the same things all the time. But you might have a product that's gold, silver, and bronze versions that needs different welcome kits. Or you might have different customer segments that buy the same product but for different reasons and use it in different ways. They might need different welcome kits as well. So you might need to think about the extent of your portfolio, the different parts of it, the how complicated your products and services are to use, how much training is going to be needed, for example, how much support, how often it changes. Because if you write a welcome kit, someone's got to keep it up to date. How much customization is typically undergone. Because if you write a generic welcome kit and send it to customer X, if customer X looks at it and says, well, these screenshots don't look anything like the product we're using, how helpful was the welcome kit? So we need to think about that side of things. How comfortable are your customers with adopting this type of product or service? Now, this is an interesting one. So what I'm saying here is, alongside the other considerations, now I'm saying you might have a customer who's and this would typically be like a larger customer who could say to you, oh, yeah, look, we consume software all the time. We're so used to it. We embrace it. No problem. We've got a whole HR team and even got a specialist training team to help us. And our team members anyway are very proficient at getting familiar very quickly with new software. They do it all the time. Don't worry, we know what we're doing. And then you might find another customer who is planning to use the same software in the same way, but perhaps they're much smaller and they don't have HR and they don't have training, and maybe it's a newer team and they don't have the experience. And so they're saying, look, we're a rabbit in the headlights. We haven't got a clue. We've never implemented something like this before in our lives. We don't know where to start. Please help us. And so one client and the other client there, even if they've got identical needs, because they are different in their maturity, may actually require a different approach. You need to think about that. How much help do they want from people? How much help do they want from self-service? Some clients, like again, that first client that we looked at there, they don't worry about it, we've got this covered. But please do provide any automated self-help, and we can look up reference information from that. That'll be very handy, compared to the please come in and actually take us step by step through this and give us guidance and let us ask questions and give us your answers and help us understand things better, that might require a bit more hand holding. Is this multiple languages? Is this multiple time zones as well? It hasn't said that there, but it's the same or similar sort of concept you need to think about. Who is going to manage and maintain the welcome kit even after it's created? So step one, create it, but then step two, keep it up to date. A welcome kit that is not up to date equals a frustrated customer. I used your welcome kit. It said go to X, and X was actually a broken page link. You're not going to get a high CSAT or a good NPS score if that's what's happening. So you've got to make sure that you've got systems and processes in place. It's an ongoing job. It's not a one-off job. So you need to consider that as well. Okay, so what's right for you? Well, okay, the welcome message. Who's it going to come from? How long should it be? What format should it be in? I like a video here. Now, obviously, you don't want a 30-minute, well, usually, unless there's reasons why you don't want a 30-minute video. You want a 1 minute 20 seconds video that is bright and breezy and energetic and is welcoming the client and just explaining in your kit. You will find very quickly. Okay, people respond well to that. What format should it be written in? I like the whole thing to go online personally. So email them the link and maybe a password or whatever, it's for them, but I would put it online. And that makes it easier to manage and to control and to do version control, etc. If you imagine, supposing you printed all of this out and sent it, imagine then you upgrade it. Imagine the pain you'd have to go through compared to having it online, even compared to digital. So are you going to personalize it for each client, as we said, or are you going to have just one version that suits everybody, or are you going to segment your clients and say we're going to have a welcome kit per segment, in which case what are your criteria for segmentation? Is it complexity of product? Is it complexity of use? Is it maturity of client, as I was suggesting? Is it a combination of those three things? Good. Okay, so what do you, in considering what's going to go in, there should be call to actions inside the welcome kit. What do you want that person who reads that kit, what do you want them to do? Okay, I've read it, so what? Okay, so you should be really clear as to what the next steps are. How obvious have you made it for them? How well motivated and incentivized are they to go and do it? And how easy is it? Have you made it difficult, or have you said, go and do this, and by the way, the link to do it is here and the instructions are there? So it's easy for them to go right ahead straight away now and do X that you're asking them to do. Is there clear guidance on the next steps? Is it simple? Is it comprehensive? Is it useful? And are you checking it to make sure it really works properly? Try and provide a flow and a pace. The best stories are the stories that have a traditional beginning, middle, and end, where you set the stuff out at the beginning, you then go on the journey, overcome the challenges one by one, and in the end you get the results. And it's all very clear what part of the process you're in, and everybody's clear where they are and what they're doing next and what the situation is. So have you structured it well? Have you got a way of them being able to bookmark where they are so they can easily come back, or do they have to flip back through pages? Well, where was that thing? And now I've got to go back that way again, and now I've got to go forwards to this to find the bit I want. Or is it just very clearly all the time, just leading them step by step in the right direction? Now, I love the concept of sign off. Now, it may be difficult to get signatures because they're kind of like, a signature has this sort of legal feeling about it that stakeholders may be wary of, and indeed that you as an organization, your lawyers may be wary of you sort of starting to sign things. So it may be that signing is not quite the right thing, but a sign off could be a check the box to say I've done this. So again, as they go through the welcome kit, maybe they're actually doing stuff, and maybe they're checking the box to say, I've got to this stage, that's done, now I'm moving to this stage. And of course, if it's online, you're seeing that in real time. So that's a really powerful tool. So Adrian, advantage of it being online is that you can maintain it as an evergreen asset with regular updates. Absolutely. Also, even months or years after onboarding it, you can use it as a reference asset. Absolutely. It's the first welcome asset. The big ongoing reference asset is the success plan, of course. So the welcome kit enables the development of a high quality success plan. The success plan in turn becomes the ongoing reference asset, if that makes sense. But you may still need to refer back to the welcome kit from time to time. So the concept of what you're saying, though, I do entirely agree with. Just a slight sort of tweaking as we move from onboarding into more of the ongoing relationship stuff, adoption planning, adoption implementation, and value realization. So we will move more from the welcome kit, which is really just for onboarding, into the success plan, which is absolutely all the way through value realization. We need to keep using it. So with all of that in mind, and having thought about all of your different customer segments and so on, you might well then be able to come up with some kind of list of, is it one welcome kit? Is it multiple welcome kits? How similar are they? Can we templatize this and do like one master template and then adapt for different segments, for example? And then a flow through of then validating information and proofreading, of maybe running it past a couple of friendly customers. Does this make sense? If we'd have provided that for you in the first place, would it be much more useful than what we did provide? Yeah, why didn't you? Well, we hadn't done it yet. So thank you very much. Revise where necessary, have some kind of revision process and program, assign somebody to be in charge. So definitely recommend somebody to be responsible. The RACI matrix, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. We need someone responsible so that it gets done. Now, you might want to also consider in this onboarding phase of the post-sales journey that you could be charging for some of these services. Now, we've looked at onboarding as very much being the sat down, table folded away, chair upright before we taxi to the runway and take off. Other companies I know use onboarding in a much more thorough way. And that much more thorough way includes a lot of what I would describe as adoption. And that's fine, because what's in a word, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's a semantic argument. The only thing that matters is that everybody who's having the conversation is familiar with how we're using the terminology and understand the meaning of the other person who's talking. And so you could then say, well, onboarding could become onboarding as a service in either direction, either from an implementation point of view, which is the sort of immediate prior to contract signing. We've got to install it, configure it, customize it, whatever. So there's that sort of stuff that needs to be done. Or then there's more of the preparing the user stuff, which is more what I would describe as adoption planning and implementation. And that's the training, the support, the communication, the process realignment. So there's that, or both. And there's a lot of value in that. And for a lot of clients, I know I have clients who charge professional services fees for either or both of those. You may. So you've got to think about that, and it's very important. And by the way, there's no such thing as free customer success management. And we all know that. If we just stop and think for a moment, there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as free customer success management, because at the end of the day, it may or may not be a line item on the bill of materials, but it's still in the costs. Okay, it's either just built into the costs or it has its own line on the bill. But either way, it's in there, I promise. On that basis, then, should we actually have it as a separate service, and what would be the benefit of that? Well, I think the benefit of that would generally be that the client is able to select from levels of onboarding as a service. You could have a basic level service that is no additional charge, not free, but it's no additional charge. That's included within the purchase. And then they could add bundles of additional services, such as what you see here, if you wish to do so. So this could be a great way of adding additional professional services fees with your client. So what could that come from? Well, there's loads of things. There's lots of different stuff that we could say is in onboarding. And I'm not saying all of these are onboarding, okay? I'm just trying to give you a list to think about what might be in onboarding for you to consider. So I would say some of this comes before onboarding, like installing and setup, and some of it comes well after it, like customer relationship management and advocacy. But nevertheless, I want this concept of it being a flow, a circular flow, rather than being sort of step by step, and it's very granular, and we don't think of the whole sort of holistic thing. We need to always be sort of holistically thinking about what else we can be doing. All right, good. So in order to answer what needs to be done, I would ask 3 questions. Who does these things now, this list here, or whatever list you come up with? When or how often do they do them? And how well do they do them? And what you're looking for, of course, is either complete gaps, no one's doing it when it ought to be done, and or insufficient levels or quality. So they're doing it, but not enough in terms of either quantity or quality or both. And those are the things then you need to address. Okay, so you're going to do a little bit of research and a little bit of workshopping and thinking about, effectively, if you like, this is the customer journey touch points, isn't it? So you're going back to your customer journey and saying, right, currently, how well are we managing all of these post-sales touch points in this onboarding sort of phase where we've just done the sale, they're not yet completely competent in using it. This is the list of things that we might include. Are we doing them all already, or are there some that need a bit more of our attention? So, okay, let's sum up what we've been talking about. By the end of phase 3, the senior project lead and other key stakeholders will know what they've bought, what it supports, what the initiative is, what parts of their business will be impacted, what the change is going to require, how the solution works, and how to get our help and support, and so on. We'll have started to forge a great relationship with them, and we will have got some kind of sign-off by the end that onboarding has been completed. Not that everything's been done, but they are now conscious about what needs to happen in order to get to mastery. So the key learning points were really, we covered a little bit about the purpose of the framework and a breakdown of the the Practical CSM Framework in the beginning, and then we looked at what happens in phase 3, onboarding versus adoption, the journey to mastery, what they need to know, and how we can put that into a kit. We looked at onboarding as a service. We looked at that who does what list, and we looked at how we can say whether or not phase 3 is completed for a particular customer that we're working with. So if you have any questions, now is your opportunity to ask them. Please complete the evaluation. You can see there is a link to it actually in the chat window. Thank you, Gerald. Training evaluation. Please evaluate the course. It helps us to understand how well we're doing and how we can improve. And notice that you can, if you wish, get a 135-page guide to our framework for free. If you go to the link that you see there, so that is practicalcsm.com/psmf/guide. Do you want me to type that in? practicalcsm.com/pcsmf-guide. There we go. Thank you, George. So I was asking, in your experience, what are the most common mistakes that CSMs make during the onboarding adoption process that may negatively affect the whole project, and how to prevent? I think by not providing all of the information that the client needs, and that delays things for them, or even not keeping them up to date with what's happening so that they don't feel in control. So it's either a literal physical delay because they couldn't do things they need to do to move things forwards, or things might be moving forwards, but we're not giving them the power of the information so they feel comfortable about it. So those are the, so both of those things are around communication. And indeed, onboarding is all about communication, isn't it? So on the other hand, we could bombard them with too much information, as was discussed with Adrian. And again, the issue there is, again, that they switch off, they stop listening. And so again, they're still not happy. So that's really the key there, is the communication. Thank you for that question. Any other questions that anyone wants to ask? Now is your chance to do so. And I'll stop sharing whilst you're having to think about that. And we are on the hour, so I think we've done all that we set out to do. Don't forget that next month we will be looking at phase 4, which is the adoption planning. I really like that phase, so please come back next month and let's take a deep dive into that one. Thank you, Marta. That's very kind of you to say so. And also Jerome, thank you, Cherie. It's been great. So thank you all for showing up. We do appreciate that. And yeah, do come on more episodes in the future. Thank you, Shilpi, Adrian, Ihor, Rachel. And I think that is goodbye from me. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Nicholas. Bye-bye.